lot of our listeners and viewers know about the controversy behind Larry Warren. But for those who may not be familiar with what the issue is with this witness that you decided to co-author this book with, I just wanted to sort of give you the time to maybe unpack that for us. What happened, what the issue was, and where you are now with all of that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, well, the Rendlesham Forest UFO incident is actually a series of events that occurred between Christmas and New Year's of 1980. And the story broke in October of 1983 in the British tabloid The News of the World, because one of the men allegedly involved went forward and gave an account of it under pseudonym. His real name was Larry Warren, and in fact, he was in the Air Force. He was stationed at RAF Bentwaters at the time. He was deployed in the forest area surrounding the base at one point during the period of these events toward the end, and maintained that he observed, along with several dozen other Air Force personnel, a appearance of a craft and beings. And we actually met briefly in 1984 during the Westchester triangular craft overflights, and then met again in 1987. This at the 40th anniversary of Roswell and the modern age of UFO sightings and Kenneth Arnold MUFON Symposium, which that year was held at American University in Washington, D.C. I had been on a panel discussion about abductions, which he heard, and I had heard him speak about his alleged experiences. We ran into each other in the hallway the last day of the conference. I wanted to do an interview with this guy, and I did not know at the time he had already decided he wanted me to co-author a book with him. He actually came to New York the very following weekend, and I did an extended recorded interview with him, which he gave me permission to publish, and toward the end of Sunday said, I think you're the person I'd like to write a book with. And proposed what I considered fair terms, which was I be free to do this research in any manner that I wanted, and including if I could upturn his story, and he would be free to get his account, on the record. I thought it would take a year or two, but it did not. It took 9 years. A good part of which was not pleasant, but it was an important project to me. And when he approached me, I had been at that point of looking to get involved in my first book-length project. I assumed it was going to be on abduction, but this kind of tipped the scales. And what I was not prepared for in any sense, it's really not part of my character or makeup, although we learn to compensate for these things over time when we need to, was the simple fact that somebody had approached me with the intention of deceiving me on very certain key issues, with the intent of enrolling me in then helping him to deceive others, which is exactly what happened. So much of his account hung together well, and the few things that didn't quite make sense I was able to rationalize or to chalk off to post-traumatic stress, which I don't now believe that he had, just drinking a lot early on. And we commenced our research. After 5 months or so, we went to England, which I felt was great. It was my second trip to England. I knew that we would look more serious as author researchers if we actually went back to the location, unaware at the time that in September. I think I was back in the UK for the 25th time or thereabouts. Um, but we began our work in earnest. And that very first night on location in Suffolk, February 18th, 1988, within sight of RAF Bentwater's perimeters, we had our own multiple UFO sighting, which was the most shocking thing I had ever seen since I was 14 years old, quite simply. And in a way, as far as enrolling me in his story, in completing the book with him, etc., the best thing that could have ever happened to my co-author. It was a matter at that point of me to say, you know, you either believe him or you don't. And you've just had a display of, this extraordinary activity right here on location. And so we continued over the years. When the book was finally published, it did no better or no worse than any UFO book in the States, but partly because of random timing. The book was published in the UK in June of 1997, the 50th anniversary of Roswell, the Modern Age of UFOs. The small press that published the book in the UK really went all out in every way that they could, with a very constrained budget, to bring the book to people's notice. And it was a smash bestseller all over the United Kingdom, resulting in like a 13-city, 1-month book tour. One of the great experiences of my life. And for years after the fact, the book stood at a point of respect and continued to bring to me people I would have never met otherwise, opportunities to speak in locations I would have probably never visited, and a certain amount of respect that I would have not garnered had I not stuck with this project for so long. Unfortunately, it all started to really unwind in 2016 and 17 when one person after another started to come forward questioning my co-author's account in very specific terms, making contrary statements on record that completely negated each other, attacks, some of them in terms of the wording extremely violent, on people who simply were citing the truth and then refusing to answer specific questions of mine regarding things that he had told me. And then my finding out that he had been making a living for the previous 20 odd years forging rock and roll memorabilia, and just as important, forging the provenance that would accompany the work, and learned how to work the system illegally and very well, in some cases very large and well-known auction houses. We have not been in touch for about 8 years in any manner, which is fine with me. And there is still a small clique of people that follow him, although so much has been published to completely show what a liar he is. Unfortunately, the main result of this in terms of my life as a writer and investigator was that the book I was most proud of is littered with exaggerations, confabulations, half-truths, truths, and has suffered greatly in reputation as a result. Once this information came to me, and I had to admit how wrong I had been for so long, I had to bring all of this information to the attention of our American publisher in New York City and say, my investigation shows that this is the result. You need to do your own investigation. And if you come up with the same results I have, then you have to do something that I really hate but needs to be done, which is this book has to go out of print. And that's exactly what happened. And that book has been out of print 8 years now and will not be going back in. It hurts in that there is so much I am proud of in that book, hundreds of parts of it. There are several hundred annotated, researched, and confirmed footnotes, every one of which I stand by. Um, my narrative is absolutely as true as it can be, except in the places where I believed and was misled by aspects of what I believed and was fed. Um, as it stands right now, life goes on. Um, I realized, there are only two ways you can handle something like this. There's a kind of Dick Cheney, my way of the highway. Real men don't admit they're wrong. You just hunker down and tough your way through it, because telling the truth is for sissies. And I spent more than a year following this. Every talk I gave, every interview I did on radio, every opportunity that people gave me to talk about this, to apologize, literally. And when I think of the list of well-known people I helped to mislead, I think of the list of the thousands of people that I don't know and will never meet, who took everything in that book seriously as a nonfiction account, which is just what it was billed as, not a nonfiction account informed by a fair amount of fiction.
What is the biggest lesson you learned from this entire experience when it comes to Left at Eastgate?
You termed it correctly, what I believe, because I don't know. At this point, I would say I do not believe his account of being taken underground and programmed and going through this fascinating stuff that he lays out in the book. If that happened, I think it happened to his roommate, who is one of the somewhat mysterious figures in this story, because he has been very careful never to give a full account. A gentleman named Adrian Bustinza, on the record, who made it clear to Larry that he was never going to talk about what he experienced or thought or believed he experienced. And that is another variable in this. Did certain aspects of this happen, or were they put into the heads of the individuals involved? I think Larry was in the Air Force. He was there at the time. He may well have had earlier UFO-related experiences. And I say this in great part because his late mother, a lovely woman who both Bud and I interviewed extensively, certainly maintained that she had been taken, with clear memories of being inside a craft, etc. And this is a very proper Boston bred lady who is not prone to exaggerations, certainly not in the service of supporting anything her son had said. So there is that. Also, that Larry, the real modus operandi here, as far as I've been able to look back and put together, he really wanted to be a personality. He really wanted to be well known. He really wanted to be famous. And in his mind growing up, it was all around rock and roll. That didn't happen, in good part because he didn't have the musical chops to do it. And people say, well, why would anybody want to be famous for something like this? Well, if you want to be a public figure, the widgets that get you there are sometimes secondary. And this is what he chose to go with. And I was the person he chose to enroll in helping to sell that story, which is very different than what's happened with this situation with the British film production companies and Netflix, where there was the same intent to deceive, but not because they wanted to be famous for something, as much as that there was money to be made on this sensationalistic, bogus, absolutely outrageous type of presentation of what could have been an historic 3-part Netflix miniseries on the same UFO case. That's one of the things that drew me to it. What an opportunity. And of course, that didn't come to be.